Hello my friends, David Kessler here and welcome back to the studio. Today I'm going to answer your questions. There's so many questions that I get that are similar, and they quite frankly have been answered in all the videos that I've done over the last 3 years. So we're going to go through those. And the first one that I always get is, what brushes do you use? And I'm going to tell you what I use, and I'll put links for them, but it doesn't matter what brushes I use. It makes absolutely no difference whatsoever in the painting that you do. What I use, and brushes for anybody, are personal preference. I use the certain ones because I like the properties that they have. A lot of people use them and they say, gosh, these are the worst brushes I've ever used, and I hate them. That's what I say, it's personal preference. And the way I make paintings doesn't have anything to do with the way that you make paintings. So just keep that in mind. You have to go through a lot of brushes. You have to spend money, you have to buy brushes. You have to test a lot of different brushes to see what works best for you. I've done that over the years and I've settled on what works for me. It may not work for you, just so you know. I'll tell you, I'll gladly tell you. But brushes don't make any difference in the work that you put out there, okay? The first one that I like, and I use, these are natural bristle brushes, right? Natural bristle brushes, all right? This is an Escoda brush, brand new, a Classico. Escoda Classico, natural bristle, okay? Gesso brushes from Dick Blick. They're Dick Blick brand gesso brush. Creative Mark primer brush. Creative Mark from Jerry's Artarama primer brush. Okay. That's what I use. Pretty simple, right? I mean, it's basic. I like natural bristle brushes best, so that's what I use. You may hate them. You know, the bristles come out. I don't care. You probably do. It's personal preference, right? What paint do you use? That's another common question I get. What paint do you use? I use Golden heavy body acrylic paint. That's it. All right. When I'm painting with watercolor, I use Core watercolor, Q-O-R, also made by Golden. All right, so those are the two brands that I use. What gesso do you use? I use Utrecht Professional Acrylic Gesso. It's by far the best gesso on the market. It's the thickest, the creamiest, has the most titanium in it, which makes it whiter and a bit more opaque than most. By far the best. It's like Golden paint. Golden paint is the best. I don't like Golden's gesso, so I use Utrecht gesso, but I love the Golden paint. And I don't use a lot of other paints, right? I mean, I don't use a lot of fluid paint. Sometimes I'll use a little fluid paint. Because it's thinner if I need to cover a specific area, or do a watery sort of a underpainting or something like that. But for the most part, it's just straight heavy body acrylic paint. Another question I get is, how do you keep your paint from drying out on your palette? And do you use a retarder to help with that? No, I do not use a retarder. My paint doesn't dry out on my palette because I use a lot of paint. I put a lot of paint on the palette. Now, if you put a dime size, dollop out of your little bitty paint tube onto your palette in acrylic paint, it's going to dry out. It'll dry in 10 minutes. If you live in Arizona, it'll be dry before it gets out of the tube, right? So, just use more paint. I put a lot of paint on the palette and I don't have ever any problems with it drying out. That's just me. If you want to use acrylic paint and yours dries out too quickly wherever you live, think about using the Golden Open paint. Open paint is acrylic. It's water-based just like the regular paint, but it has an extended drying time. All right, so it may take a day or 2 days for it to dry, more like the workability time for oil paint. It's a great option for you if you're having trouble in the climate that you live in with your acrylic paint. Another question is, do you use mediums? Almost never. Almost never. I'm a basic painter. I like paint and brushes. I like making a good composition with good color and paint it with a brush. That's radical, right? I mean, that's not what any other abstract painters do. That's the reason I do it. It's because it's different. It's opposite of what other people do. I don't use many mediums. Occasionally I'll use, a gloss gel medium or gloss medium or a matte medium to change the glossiness or the matte finish of a painting or a paint color based on what I want the finished look to be on a painting. Or sometimes I'll apply after the painting is done. I like to have certain parts of the painting that are glossy and certain parts that are matte. So some things stand out and some things fade to the back. So I may apply a matte medium or a gloss medium once the paint's dry. So mixing it beforehand or putting it on after is something that sometimes that I'll do that, yes. Any other kind of mediums, I rarely use it. Sometimes I'll use a light molding paste and mix it with paint color to make thicker, heavier texture in or around my center of interest. Typically I'll use that with a dark value color in and around my center of interest to help set that off. And I'll also make those areas glossier than other parts of the painting so that they stand out more. Okay, that's basically what I use. People ask if I varnish my paintings. And the answer to the previous question probably gives you some hint that no, I do not varnish my paintings. The reason I don't varnish my paintings is I don't like a consistent, homogeneous finish over my entire painting. I like areas of contrast in the appearance of the different parts of the painting. I like areas nearest my center of interest to be glossy so that they stand out more. I like them to be heavily textured so they stand out more. I want all other parts of the painting to fade back and be more matte in finish so that they don't come forward as quickly. Right, so I like that additional contrast on the surface of the painting so that everything is not a consistent finish. There again, that's personal preference and something that has evolved over the last 15 or so years for me. It's not that it's right or wrong to varnish or not varnish. Probably if you varnish your paintings, it protects them better than what I do. It's just, there again, it's personal preference on what it is that you want to do with your paintings. All right. Hope this was helpful for you. I hope it answers some basic questions that you guys have tossed over to me over the years. And I think we're going to do a part 2. This is part 1. We'll do a part 2 video too that'll pick up on some other questions that you have. I hope it was helpful for you. I'll see you on the next video. Thanks.